Okay, this morning I raced the Bridges 10K race here in Perth, Western Australia. It's our state road racing championships for the 10K. Not that that was super relevant for me today. Came through with a pretty mediocre time of 34:30, which is about 40 or 50 seconds off my current PB, which was set about 2 years ago. It's been really frustrating trying to get down closer to that, or should be into the mid 33s really, given the amount of training that I've done and given my times and some other distances. But yeah, just wasn't to be today. I knew that it wasn't going to be a crazy good race coming off the marathon block in Osaka in the early February. I knew I didn't have a lot to give in the legs, but yeah, it was good to roll over, have a bit of race experience. I always have fun racing. And it was a bit warm this morning as well, about 20 degrees, very sunny. A lot of people were reporting that they didn't really expect it to be as warm as it was. All that out of the way, I did want to chat about my race shoe, which is what we do on this channel. The Adios Pro 4. I recently received a half size up from my original size 10, which I enjoyed, but was kind of held back a little bit by the short toe box, which was giving me a bit of problems with the big toe. We've gone the half size up to a 10.5 now. That's mostly been solved, and so I wanted to share a little bit of thoughts on the Pro 4 after a combined total of probably about 80 or 90 Ks, and now including a 10K race, obviously in separate pairs. So this, I think, is my favorite overall racing shoe from the 5K all the way up to the marathon. Not necessarily the best at the 5 or 10. I don't actually think it would be in my top 5 as a pick for those. But for today, I thought it would be a good pick because I know it's safe, I know it's reliable, and I've also just really wanted to get a race done in it because I do think, yeah, it is probably my favorite racing shoe overall. Half and full marathon, I think that this shoe really comes into its own. I think the ride of it really suits that, the kind of smooth, efficient, protective, comfortable ride. I think it really works quite nicely when I'm kind of turning the legs over from around 3:30 up to 3:45, I guess, from a marathon. In terms of the fit, it is much improved with this size at 10.5, and with that extra bit of room, you can really appreciate how good this upper is. This unidirectional stretch mesh, the softer fabrics everywhere, including the tongue, just feel fantastic compared to the Adios Pro 3, which was quite a harsh stripped down upper. It just has a little bit more give, a little bit more stretch. Whereas with the Pro 3, you really had to lace it up how you wanted it to be for the entire race. There was no kind of compromise on the fit. It needed to be spot on. Here with a bit more stretch, have a bit more forgiveness, and it does feel just that bit better. In terms of the length, I would still say that this shoe fits a half size short, and that's also going from the Pro 3, which I would say probably fit slightly longer, maybe just a half size long. So I wore a size 10 in the Pro 3 with absolutely no worries at all. And I've gone to the point where a 10.5 is still shorter than some other racing shoes on the market. So you could almost argue a full size up would be the go, but I would only do that if you're gonna go in store. I think the half size up for most people should be enough. I did have some slight blistering with the Achilles in this shoe, which is bizarre considering that I didn't have any problems with the smaller size. So I guess I'm kind of choosing between a black toenail or an Achilles blistering. I'm personally very fussy with the toe box. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the blistering, and I'll put up with it because the ride of the shoe is so good. But yeah, that is something to point out. I have heard a few people talking about Achilles blisters. Not really sure what's causing it here. A couple of shoes like the Cloudboom Strike, I can definitely see where that's coming from because it is such a hard, sharp edge. I cut it open to compensate for that. And even the Wave Rebellion Pro 3 from Mizuno, the Flash, oh no, the low has the same heel counter. It's got this kind of stitching around the edge, so you can understand why that's kind of fraying on people's ankles. But for this, I'm not really sure what's doing it. It's quite a soft material. There's not a whole lot of stiffness there, but yeah, for whatever reason, got my left Achilles pretty good. I'm probably not going to snip it straight away, but we will see how it breaks in, whether it just needs a bit of fraying to kind of soften up a bit. Overall for me, this is one of the nicest super shoe uppers that I've worn. The only real improvements I would say, other than maybe mellowing out that heel counter, it could just be something that has to do with me because I do seem to blister very, very easily. SC Elite, Wave Rebellion Pro, Cloudboom Strike. I just need that kind of soft, flexible heel counter, which is why I love the Endorphin Elite so much. One of the best heel counters out there. Zero chance of getting a blister from that. So yeah, maybe it's me, maybe it's the shoe. That's one of the things I would change. And then the other thing I would probably add to this shoe is some better laces. These cheap kind of cheese wire laces do my head in. You do have to be a little bit fussy with how you lace them up, because the laces have zero give, zero stretch, and they also come undone pretty easily, so you do need to double knot them and then tuck them into the shoe to stop them from coming undone by themselves. Some sawtooth laces would go an absolute treat here. Everybody else is getting onto it. I don't know what's holding Adidas back. Maybe they just bought extra, maybe they've got a few to burn, but yeah, sawtooth laces, please. Jumping into the midsole, this is without a doubt one of the most comfortable, smooth, rhythmic racing shoes that I've worn. I really enjoyed it, even at the 10K where I didn't think it was kind of perfect. I think it does have a little bit more compression and kind of sink in than I would usually prefer for a 10K. I do think that's where, well, I guess in Adidas's line, you could argue for the Takumi Sen 10. A little bit more snappy, bit more aggressive. But for today, for the purposes of just getting through a 10K race and getting a score on the board, I think it was very nice. It was smooth, very easy to lock into a pace and kind of stay consistent, turn the legs over. A couple of things that I did notice though. My feet got pretty warm in this shoe. I don't know whether that's to do with the insole, the socks that I was wearing, my foot strike, but I did just find at about the 6K mark, I kind of noticed how hot they were underfoot. Felt like the entire midsole was warm, so, or maybe it's even the outsole, I guess. Could be something to do with the rubber or the foam, the way that it's compressing, but I did find it to be quite hot. Not to the point of like blistering or hot spots on the bottom of my feet, but it did just feel like the midsole itself was warm. The other thing was that I think it worked the upper part of my calves a little bit more than other super shoes. And I'm not really sure biomechanically why that would be. I have no clue what this shoe is doing to kind of give that change, because most super shoes do a pretty good job of offloading my calves, and the bottom of my calves is fine, but the attachment point just below the knee, I do just feel a little bit of extra strain when running in this shoe. But other than that, very smooth, very comfortable. Yeah. I think it is one of the best racing shoes all over. I think most people are going to be able to use this for a 5 and 10K, half and full marathon, no worries. But yeah, for me, I think the half and full marathon is where this shoe is really going to come into its own. Outsole grip, this was kind of a big deal for Adidas to move away from Continental. This light traction stuff, absolutely love it. The grip is fantastic. The durability, can't really say after one run, but I do imagine it's going to be pretty good, because I have been using CPU outsoles on some other Chinese brands, such as the Douyin PB3. This has that same kind of, I guess it feels kind of like silicone almost, has the same compound there. This has got 90 Ks into it, and you would barely know that it's been worn. So good move from them. It's softer, it's more silent onto the road, and it has a little bit more kind of adaptability as well. So it's not slappy, not that the Pro 3 was slappy, but it does just keep that kind of nice smooth sensation underfoot. Having a bit of Continental on the toe off, I'm not actually sure whether that did anything, but either way, the grip performed really nicely in dry conditions, to be fair. But I have also worn this in the wet in the lead up to the Osaka Marathon, and I did notice how good it was, even on some slippy roads. I guess we could round this video out with a couple of comparisons, which I think is always important, let you know where this shoe sits with the rest of the crowd. I think right now, the most similar shoe I've felt is the Endorphin Elite 2. This is a little bit softer, a little bit more compliant, and it kind of leans more into that kind of adaptable, kind of flowing ride where it kind of gels onto the ground, and it gives you that nice smooth propulsion. The rock ring of this shoe is more down to the compression of the foam, I found. So although the toe spring looks pretty sharp, I did kind of feel like it was like melting onto the road, whereas this does still have a little bit more stiffness from the foam and rod setup. So I felt like this was a little bit more deliberate, whereas the Endorphin Elite was just this kind of nice flowing ride. I really like the upper on both of them, probably slightly preferring the Endorphin Elite right now with that softer heel counter, but this does also fit a half size short, so hold that against both of them. Overall, yeah, these two shoes for people who like that kind of softer, smoother, kind of more efficient feeling ride underfoot. These two are some of the best out there. Some people might find this a little bit too soft, a little bit too compressive, but I do think it firms up a little bit more than it's kind of been reported. A lot of people are seeing the softness of this shoe and going, nah, not for me. It does end up being a little bit closer than I think a few people think. $420 though is a pretty big price jump. I think $360 is a very easy recommendation. when you're saving 60 bucks. Another one that I really enjoyed was the Cloudboom Strike. I like these shoes for their bounce out of the forefoot. They're doing this with the bounce board set up in here. A little bit less of a rock ring up front. It's definitely more compression and bounce based. Whereas I think this is that kind of halfway point between rock ring, the compression of the foam, and then the rebound that you get out of it. I would say this is a little bit more mechanical. This is a little bit more smooth and gentle. The upper on the Cloudboom Strike is in a bit of shambles. Big baggy forefoot. The midfoot lockdown, you have to crank it down fairly tight. Blisters in the Achilles, and the grip is shocking as well compared to the Pro 4. But I do still have a big soft spot for this shoe. It is a lot of fun. And even if it's not great now, I do think it's a shoe that people should be aware of, because I think fix the upper, fix the outsole, you probably got one of the best super shoes on the market. But right now, I'm probably still leaning the Pro 4 just because it's ticking a few more boxes, especially in the upper department. The new CLOX 1 2.0 is another interesting one. I do think that this is a big upgrade for this shoe. It's obviously taking it from kind of heavy training shoe status into a legitimate super shoe. The one thing I did notice about this is that the foam, the Piva foam here, just doesn't seem to have as much life as some other racing shoes on the market, which is not usually the problem. Now I feel like we've kind of got to the point where most foams are about as good as each other, and then it's just how they've kind of put that together with the geometry, with the shaping of the carbon plate. But here I actually felt like the foam was kind of just not really giving me as much back as the TPEE in the Pro 4. So I felt like this is kind of solely a marathon shoe because of that. I feel like it gives enough to kind of keep me rolling through my marathon paces, 3:35 to 3:45, 3:45 being my actual marathon pace, but that kind of like tempo effort above threshold. This shoe felt really, really good. And I do like the upper, I do like the flared Achilles. That is something in its corner. But I do think the Adios Pro 3, despite being a bit softer, a bit more compressive, just has a bit more of an explosive bounce, bit more of a kind of, yeah, smooth, intuitive ride. Whereas I felt like the CLOX 1, I maybe had to think a little bit more about where I was striking on this shoe to try and engage that rocker and get it off the front. Piva foam, in some cases seems to be the best out there, but in other applications, I do feel like it can lack a bit of life. I think Hoka might need to kind of find something a little bit more exciting, because the foam here is maybe not up to scratch with the Pro 4. May as well keep going with the Pro 3, which is my current marathon PB holder. Not technically by choice, I was over in Japan with Mizuno, but I do really enjoy this shoe for its kind of big, booming, propulsive ride. Took a bit of time to get used to, learning to compress that foam in the heel, let the shoe carry me through. Key differences here are in the running style that I use them in. I've kind of had to learn to crash into that foam and really let the shoe do what it wants. Whereas with the Pro 4, I can kind of skid up onto my forefoot and run in what I feel is a more natural way for me personally. So for me, I do really like the Pro 3 for its propulsive ride, and also, interestingly, its ability to offload my calves. Every marathon that I've run so far, other than in the Pro 3, I've cramped with about 2 or 3 Ks to go, really badly. Coming into Optus Stadium, can always just remember the dread of feeling it twinge. In the Pro 3, nothing at all. Calves were fine in the days after the marathon. Quads were decimated, which is what Mizuno said in the lab. They said that the pitching of this shoe and the geometry is designed to load up your quads, take the load off your calves, which are smaller muscle groups, not able to handle that load as much. Whereas, as I mentioned, with the Pro 4, I did have a little bit more kind of tension through the top of my calf, not to the point of cramping, mind you, but just a little bit more, which is a slight difference. It's kind of a trade-off between offloading the calves and running in a more smooth, kind of streamlined feeling way. This definitely feels more intuitive, but after spending a training block in the Pro 3, I could definitely see the merit of both of them. I think if I was put on a marathon start line right now, I would probably be leaning slightly towards the Pro 4. It would be very, very close now. Those very small margins could change on a day-to-day basis, but giving it a rating out of 100, like if this is a 93 out of 100, this is sitting at a solid 90. It's very, very small margins, both great shoes. We'll go one more with the Chowdown Feiying Plaid, which is almost a bit of an Adios Pro 4 before the Adios Pro 4 even existed. This released about 2 years ago now. It's been updated to the Plaid 2, which I'm very excited to review. Got a heap of super shoes waiting. This is very, very similar. Wide forefoot base, TPEE foam, very similar level of density. You'd almost believe that they're the same compound. This could be Light Strike Pro, this could be Kung Fu Pro. I do like how they've executed this completely gusseted tongue, the booty style upper, very Alpha Fly-esque. The main differences between the two, I would say, is this has a little bit more of an extended rocker, that's 60%. You do feel like it's kind of tipping you forward through the entire ride, whereas this shoe is a little bit more kind of compression and bounce based, where you get the kind of squish at the midfoot, then you get that sharp toe off through the forefoot, which works really nicely for marathon pace, but I would almost be tempted to say is a little bit too big and kind of explosive to be using for the half marathon. I'd probably be leaning more towards the Pro 4. Both are fantastic shoes. I love them for pretty much the same reasons, but I do understand that most people aren't going to go out of the way for a more obscure brand, but that is worth pointing out that Chinese brands are making some fantastic products which are very, very similar to the West even before they're kind of being released. And yeah, that's probably all I need to say. This is a fantastic shoe, comfortable upper, a few small things that could be cleaned up, but the midsole, outsole combination, absolutely top tier. Love this shoe to bits. Glad that I finally got to race in it.